Something inhuman has come to Tarker's Mills, as unseen as the full moon riding the night sky high above. It is the werewolf, and there is no more reason for its coming than there would be the arrival of cancer, or a psycho with murder on his mind, or a killer tornado. Its time is now. Its place is here in this little Maine town, where baked bean church suppers are a weekly event, where small boys and girls still bring apples to their teachers, where the nature outings of the seniors club are religiously reported in the weekly paper. Next week there will be news of a darker variety. Outside, the tracks begin to fill up with snow, and the shriek of the wind seems savage with pleasure. There is nothing of God or light in that heartless sound. It's all black winter, and dark ice. The cycle of the werewolf has begun. Stephen King's Silver Bullet, which was based off of a novella called Cycle of the Werewolf, which was originally supposed to be a calendar with artwork and Stephen King writing maybe a paragraph for each month, and it ultimately evolved into a novella that kept the artwork. This film stars Corey Haim and Gary Busey. I have the old DVD and the Shout Factory release, which unfortunately for Shout Factory is pretty bare bones for special features, but still cool. And like most all Shout Factory, you tend to get some cool art with it, and usually a reversible with the original cover. So I use the slipcover because it has the awesome artwork, and I flip the cover on the inside around so I can have the old VHS art. The excerpt I just read is from the book Cycle of the Werewolf, and I thought it would be a cool way to start the video. This film was partially directed by Don Coscarelli, who left due to creative differences, and finished by Daniel Atlas. And you can tell looking at this, there are scenes that, Don Coscarelli directed that, who, if you didn't know, was the director of Phantasm, and you can see those scenes and be like, yeah, that's his style. This looks like it might be something out of Phantasm. But it's a good movie. Would it have been better if Coscarelli completed it? By a country mile. The film focuses on a boy in a wheelchair named Martin Coslaw, and primarily it's about his relationship between him and his sister. This film uses a horror premise to tell a very human story. They have kind of a rocky relationship. Something happens in the beginning where he's part of a prank, and he feels bad for what happens and pays for what he ruined of his sisters, or should I say what his friend ruined. And we see in the beginning that even though they can be at each other's throats, they care, but she can't quite say I love you back to him. And there's also the relationship between Marty and his uncle, played by Gary Busey, which I really like. His uncle, Lauren, he builds him this very awesome wheelchair motorcycle, but the uncle is literally the only person that doesn't treat Marty different because he's in a wheelchair. Everyone else treats him different to some degree, and that's why you see why he's so close to his uncle, because just that. And as I've said before, one thing I really like is films when it shows the small town gripped by fear, and this film does it really well. We see this small, friendly New England town which it was filmed here in North Carolina. By the way, fun trivia fact, Wilmington, we see the town slowly begin to descend into fear with every killing. The first killing was a drunk and nobody thought anything of it. Everyone figured he passed out on the track. The second killing and third, it couldn't be ignored. There's a killer on the loose. And it culminates to a point where in, I believe, September, Marty's uncle gives him fireworks because the 4th of July was canceled, and both in the film and book he's really upset about it. And like the book, he talks about nobody could understand why he likes the 4th so much. I believe, even though it's never clearly stated, is enjoying the fireworks is something Marty is on equal footing with everyone else. It's not something he has to sit out because of his condition, and it's not something he can't enjoy to the fullest either. So I think that's why it's so special to him. But the uncle gives him a thing of fireworks. He goes to shoot him off. The werewolf comes at him, and he shoots a rocket in the werewolf's eye. The next that he tells his sister about it, and she says in the narration, I believed part of the story, but I understood one thing clearly. Marty himself believed all of it, so she went off to get cans for the fundraiser, and she's looking for a person with one eye. And the brilliance about this scene, and this scene was directed by Coscarelli. It's got his style all over it. It looks like it could be in a Phantasm movie, but it's not about finding the person with one eye, but the scene is all about eyes. And it's showing just the damage the werewolf is doing to the town, how empty and lifeless and far away people look. Everyone has these bleak, hopeless stares. She goes into a diner, and everyone, where earlier we see in the diner and it's full of chat, now it's just people standing there, to the point where she has to call the name of the owner of the diner a couple times before he even realizes she's there. And it ends with the reveal of who the werewolf is. And this is all brought about, the straw that broke the camel's back with the town was a point where multiple people were killed at once when they go out hunting for the killer. And it has the famous scene everyone loves where the guy's hitting the werewolf with the baseball bat, and the werewolf rips it out of his hand and starts hitting him. I'm not going to say who the werewolf is in case you haven't seen it. It's kind of obvious through the film, but this is where we start to get to the name of the film, Silver Bullet. Marty convinces his uncle to make a silver bullet, and the uncle gets the parents out of town on Halloween night, and they just wait for the werewolf, which does ultimately attack with a pretty good finale in the conclusion where the sister can finally say the words, I love you back, to her brother. Like I said, it's a really good movie. It's one of the most overlooked Stephen King movies, and probably one of the more overlooked werewolf movies of the 80s. I'll say the movie is actually an improvement on the book in almost every way. But I would recommend the book. I actually would have checked it out at the library, but my library is appointment only, and I don't want to wait a day or two to be allowed to come in to check out the book so I can have it for the review. But still, like I said, I do recommend this movie. I would recommend getting the Shout Factory, even though the features are bare bones, because when Shout Factory Blu-rays go out of print, they tend to skyrocket, so get it while you still can. That being said, this DVD is always an option, and there's a couple Stephen King collections with Silver Bullet on it. It's a good movie. I like the music in it. It's set in the 70s, but it does feel like an 80s movie, but at the same time the town does have a very timeless feel to it, and yet it's also like a time capsule. It captures the small town that many of us grew up in that doesn't exist anymore. Sad to say, that type of small town America just doesn't exist, and this film brings me back to being a kid and brings me back to that time. It was one of my favorite horror movies as a kid, and it still is. So I would give this film a B plus. So definitely check out Stephen King's Silver Bullet. Like, share, subscribe. Over and out.